So OmniTrade is a very efficient AMM because it has very low slippage as compared to, let's say, Pancake, which kind of looks like this, which means that instead of having which means that in case of PCS, the low slippage area is only this much, whereas in OmniTrade, it's this much. We have already discussed that. It's working very nicely. It's helping USGU maintain the peg. The good part is it can also be used for dissimilar assets. So this is a bit similar to Core, where they have a very significant portion of their thing is flat. But Core V2 at least, or Core V1 actually. Core V1 works primarily for similar assets, whereas OmniTrade can work for dissimilar assets as well. So we have discussed previously that the slope of the line over here determines the relative price between the two tokens which are being exchanged. And if we can have a slope like this, or if we can have a slope like this, as opposed to the default one, which is something like this, then you can track different prices. Now, the limitation which OmniTrade currently has is this: it's not a price maker solution, it's a price taker solution, which means that it cannot make the price. It needs to rely on price from a third-party oracle. So it needs an oracle, which means that new pairs cannot be added permissionlessly. You first need a reliable oracle price source before you can add a new pair, which kind of hinders the growth of the system as well as creates some technical challenges which are front running, etc., especially when it comes to dissimilar assets. And because new pairs cannot be added permissionlessly, they have to be added by the administrators. It also hinders the growth of the system. The limitation is really the oracle, because you don't necessarily have an oracle for every token pair. Uniswap solves for it because it is essentially a self-contained oracle. The system moves up and down the bonding curve, and that sort of sets the price. Whereas over here, the price is, it gives high capital efficiency because in this particular range, there's not going to be a price change. And the slope sort of determines what is the current price, and that comes from the oracle. We have a solution which will actually create a self-contained oracle for OmniTrade, so that it does not need to rely upon a third-party oracle, which also means that it effectively becomes permissionless. The limitation really has been how do you ensure that you have a price feed. But once you have price feed and you have a reliable mechanism by which you can have a self-contained oracle which can serve as the price feed, it is fairly easy to make a factory which would then allow you to add new tokens, pairs on demand. And that's exactly what we want to do. Now, essentially what we really can do is, let's say we can allow anybody to create a token pair and let's say set the initial price. And beyond that, what we can do is we can set up essentially a bonding curve. Okay. And the bonding curve will look something like this. Okay. Where this is token A and this is token B, and if the initial price was somewhere around here, okay, relative A to B, then after a certain transaction, so let's say the price, there is a transaction, and let's say the pool was initially completely balanced. Then after the transaction is done, so that particular transaction will go with very little capital with very high capital efficiency and very low slippage. But once the transaction is complete, then the system would essentially update the price on this bonding curve. If it's, let's say, it would basically move this bonding curve price up or down depending upon whether it was a buy or sell relative A to B. This is a bit misleading because the price will always be against the base asset USDO, and this is, let's say, A. So it can be like A can be worth 1 USDO or 2 USDO or 3 USDO or 4 USDO, 5 USDO, and so on. And as let's say there are more buys, then the price can move in this direction. If there are more sells, the price can move in this direction. So what this bonding curve does is it allows us to have the price move for the next transaction. So based upon where this price is, this price then determines what is going to be the angle of this slope, and that sort of will ensure, let's say, after the transaction, then it will go like this, or it might go like this. So this bonding curve effectively allows the system to be a price maker solution using an internal oracle. Now there is a little bit of an interesting thing over here. So if it is something like this, okay, this is USDO, this is token A, then the slope of this line, which is the bonding curve now for price, determines the slippage levels. So the flatter this line is, for example, if it's like this, that means that every transaction has a lower impact because this is the price impact, okay? Whereas in this case, in the case of this line, as the price goes like this, the price impact is higher, okay? So for example, if it was this line, then, and as the price went like this, the price impact is even higher. So this angle in particular again allows you to determine the slippage of the constituent pairs, and that is something which can be decided by the DAO, okay, saying that, okay, these two assets are very closely interrelated, so we can set a parameter which then effectively determines the slippage ratios for that pair, which in turn will determine how fast or how slowly the price updates happen, okay? Now beyond that, if it's a stable coin pair, then you can more or less have it to be a flat line, which means that the price doesn't really change too much or like at all. In this case, the price will always, even if any transactions you do, the price will still be at 1:1. So it becomes like an oracle which has a no unchanging price over there. And it necessarily is not really about even stable pairs or really stable coins themselves. But if you have like something like an assets which are very closely related in terms of their price, then it can be very, very flat, which means that any buys or sells do not really change the relative price between those two tokens. Now remember that this is just one level. You still have the original bonding curve, and if the liquidity sort of goes into this region or this region, the price will slip, and we can change it via various parameters. You have the alpha, beta, gamma, lambda, theta, epsilon parameters which we use to move the price. But essentially, by incorporating this bonding curve solution, we can have a self-contained oracle. And once you have a self-contained oracle, which that essentially allows us to support fully permissionless token addition, and pretty much eliminates the potential issues of front running because it's reliant upon itself at this point. That means there's no real scenario under which it can really be front run. Obviously, if somebody adds USGO ETH pair, for example, and ETH has higher volumes elsewhere, then people can sort of arbitrage the system. But in that case also, you can have slippage parameters, etc. built in. But there will be a lot of new projects which will be launched over a period of time. And for these, this AMM becomes very, very superior as compared to any other solution because it's has very high degree of simplicity. It is unlike Uniswap V3 and it has very high capital efficiency as compared to Uniswap V2 or the sushis or the pancakes of the world, and which in turn will drastically improve the transaction volumes and liquidity, which in turn should make things better for everybody in the DeFi ecosystem. Thanks. Bye.